Hello, this is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about these parents who are protesting in California because this elementary school was reading this book or something. There's supposed to be a special assembly on different kinds of families, and they had included about LGBT families, and so then they're going to have a big discussion or whatever afterwards, and the parents weren't feeling it. And they're like, we are not bringing our kids here. They tried to have different discussions with administrators and so on, so it's not working. So there was protesting. There was kind of like fights and stuff breaking out. So but it's concerning kind of how heated stuff is getting to the point of like, of how far whatever side's going to go to. But people who are LGBT or whatever, like, don't let all this stuff with the kids be something that like, I've seen a lot of people who are rational and are like, we could lose everything if you keep taking it too darn far with the kids. So I want to show you guys something, though, back in history, way back in 2008, when the whole gay marriage thing was like taking place in California. And this isn't necessarily like I don't want to trigger anybody, but the point of me showing this video from the past is to show you how much people lie about their genuine intentions in the future. So if you're wondering where I'm going to go with that, you just got to keep, pondering for a minute. We're also going to be talking about James Comey, who's a former FBI director who was fired under Trump, and him being fired, ended up triggering the Russia investigation and all that other stuff, which ended up being bunk. But he was interviewed by Jen Psaki, who's a former White House press secretary, and he's saying that Biden is the only person he can pick. And he's a lifelong Republican, and Biden because Biden cares about the Constitution and a bunch of other hogwash. So I think that's worth talking about because it's kind of hilarious and ridiculous. And we'll also be talking about some other things as well. So before we jump into it, I encourage you guys to go to blackteennews.com, check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. Please check out different merch at my store, like the I'm not the victim you're looking for. We also, got the You're Not That Special. We got different mugs that you guys can pick up as well. And we got the Roe KC aborted stuff. I mentioned that my church is doing a drive for a local pregnancy crisis centers on the 24th. It is the anniversary of when Roe v. Wade was overturned. So I encourage people to, make sure that you reflect on that and make sure that you're doing your part and you're not just a, internet troll. It's good that we have these discussions. And, I do want to thank people who do disagree with my opinions and still are like willing to engage and go back and forth, etc. And I'll get comments from people who disagree and think my logic is pretty good, but I just need to like tip them over. I don't know what else I have to do, but we'll keep working on it. But they enjoy my takes on things because I don't know, I guess they like my logic or the way I explain things and or whatnot, and it challenges them. And I had wrote a post one day about how their objections and other things like that has strengthened my arguments and prepared me, and I couldn't have written my book, which is out of reach. Oh gosh, it's upstairs. So my book, of course, God is blatantly against abortion. If not for the sort of feedback and stuff I was seeing, or sort of videos going back and forth. So, that I get on like TikTok and other places. So I am grateful to, for discourse, for conversations. Because even if people don't come to some kind of agreement, I still think there's a lot of use in that. But I'm very, my heart is overfilled with joy when I get people who say that they're, changing their minds on the issue. So um, thankful to everyone who takes the time to hear me out. So I don't have the book here in front of me, but you guys can get my book. Of course, God is blatantly against abortion. This is going to say it for coming soon, but it is out. You guys can get that on Amazon. So on what was it, on Saturday, I shared a post on YouTube, and it was actually like a segment from my book, and I got loads of compliments and stuff from it. And so, but the actual segment of it had nothing to do with religion at all. It was referencing history, something going on in the slave trade, and then a quote that was really important. And then maybe I'll read it at the end. We'll see what kind of time we have, but I don't want to. I do really want to get to the main story of the day. And then I was just comparing it to stuff today. It was just philosophy, kind of ethics and history and stuff. But I did include a link to my book, because why wouldn't I sell my book? And a few people, like very few people who commented, maybe it was just like one or two, like a handful of people were referenced or mentioned God. Again, God's not like in the post, like that's not the focus at all, but the link is to my book, and people can see the cover and they're like, this is a religious argument. Not in the post that I had, but anyway, one person was just like, why go this route? And I addressed them. And another person was like, God doesn't say anything about these things in the Bible. And I just replied, I'm like, the sixth commandment. And they're like, I just Googled the sixth commandment, and it doesn't say anything about abortion. And I'm like, you had to Google that, huh? Not that everybody knows all the commandments off the top of their heads, like to list them in order. And, but given the context clues, I just think it's funny that you couldn't guess which one that I meant. And, but then when he's pressed, he just said, why would he look at a book of fairy tales? So, to people who question, like, why did I write a book with such a heavy theological focus when it wasn't necessary? Who says it's not necessary? Well, one, people assume anyway, so I might as well explain the ethics and the logic behind those ethics as well. It's not just I'm against abortion because they'll make baby Jesus cry. There's a lot of philosophy and ethics involved and rooted in it as well. So I explain that. And if you're a Christian who's like on the same page, but you don't know how to quite articulate it, I highly recommend that you get it. But I also debunked a lot of ridiculous things. So that person was speaking from a place of ignorance, but they were so definitive in their statement. Does it say thou shalt not have an abortion, like the words abortion? No, that's not in there, but it does say thou shalt not murder. And the question is it a life? Does God consider it a life? Is it an unjust killing? And I make the case, I think it's pretty easy to make the case that those things qualify, at least from a biblical standpoint. But the Bible also doesn't say that thou shalt not drone strike people, but I'm sure you'd consider that murder if I sent, a missile your way. So anyway, I addressed stuff like that in the book, and I also think it was needed from like a Christian standpoint, because there's pro-choice Christians. So anyway, it's available. I just want to keep throwing out there that it is available. So anyway, let's get to the story, or let me start with my meme, which, by the way, a lot of people have assumed that I am Long Jawbone. If you don't know who that is, you don't know who that is. But there's a YouTuber, and who is a Black woman who talks about I wouldn't assume she's right leaning, But she talks about a lot of pop culture stuff, does reviews and whatnot. And she's, you know, edgier than I am for sure. But people think we're the same person, or ask if I'm the same person or if we're related. I've never had a conversation with Long Jawbone. But anyway, I saw this post that she shared. She didn't make this comparison, but this is how I came across it. So Xbox decided to do this video here. I mean, this post. And in the post, they said, oh, there was their Pride Month, and then they changed it to that symbol there, I guess is for the Diablo game. And so it wasn't on the Pride stuff for very long, you know, capitalism and all that. They got other stuff to promote. But In Wokeness, you know, was the one who pointed it out. And so Long Jawbone said, very interesting before and after here, which I agree. I do think that is a very interesting before and after shot of events. So I thought it was funny. But again, I am not Long Jawbone. For people who ask, I do not know who. I mean, I know who Long Jawbone is. I've just never had not even like online have we like corresponded, but I've seen some of her videos, some of her reviews. You know, no, you know, disrespect or whatever. I think she does good content. A lot of people think so. So we're just not the same person. We're just not the same person. So anyway, I want to share with you guys what's going on in California with the parents starting to rebel. And according to reports and stuff, this Fox News report, this was happening in a like a religious community, or a community that has a lot of, you know, religious ties. So I don't know. Did they just really think that they could get away with it, I guess, and are just pushing people as far as they possibly can? I don't know, but there's the school that was having this event, this assembly, and parents are upset about it. So I'm going to play a little clip from the news, and then I'm going to play actually one of the parents. There's just a snippet of her interview, but I have a longer interview that I guess some amateur reporter did that I want to show you guys.
Demonstrators on opposing sides of a social and educational issue clashed outside a North Hollywood elementary school Friday. The Los Angeles Unified School District had announced that an assembly was planned for all students K through 12 involving the recognition of gay and lesbian families in a book called The Big Book of Families. That sparked outrage among dozens of parents connected to Satakoy Elementary who held a demonstration. Pride advocates launched a counter demonstration and confrontations became violent at times.
There is one sentence in the book. It is many pages, but the one sentence says some families have two moms and some have two dads. It also talks about some families are raised by their grandparents. Some are raised with just one parent. So it's one reference to the existence of LGBTQ families.
Protesting parents we spoke with say they are not against the gay community, with many adding that they have family and friends in the LGBTQ community.
We as parents have the right to be able to determine when and where the appropriate setting is for our children to learn about that. What are you going to tell my child when he comes to you and says, you know, I have a mommy and a daddy. What does it mean to have two daddies? My mommy was pregnant with me. Which daddy was pregnant? How did the daddy have a baby?
And we're just giving a message of family acceptance, of diversity.
My message is that our kids are too young to talk about sex-related issues in an elementary school.
So, that question there, I watched an interview on Fox News that a parent had, and they said that question about, like, what are you going to tell the kid when they ask about, like, my mom was pregnant with me, what about the two dad thing? And, I don't know, I would think that most people would be able to have some kind of answer to that in some regard, but according to them, the school administrators didn't have a good answer. So I'm like, why are they talking about this? If they're like ill prepared for, because kids will ask questions and they don't stop asking questions. Like some kids don't care or whatever, and they're not inquisitive. My nephew is so inquisitive, you know, a lot of kids are. You ask them one thing and it's not really the end of the conversation. It keeps going and going and going. But I want to, like I said, I want to share this video of this parent who was interviewed to give a little bit more insight.
Hi, I'm Christine. I'm a mom here at the school. I have a 7-year-old.
So why are you here today?
We're here because the school planned on having an assembly to talk to our kids about matters that we think that the kids are too young to talk about just yet. And we planned a walkout today, and none of our kids are here for that assembly today.
And why is it bad for these children to be exposed to this sort of ideology?
Well, because they're too young to talk about sex, and you can't talk about same-sex families and couples and relations without talking about sex. We just don't think that 7-year-olds are ready to have those discussions yet. We think that 7-year-olds, or even up to the 5th grade, they're here to learn, and they're here to play, and they're not here to be sexualized and talk about topics that are beyond them right now.
Now, what would you say to the people that would say that this is probably, or that you hate gays or hate people that are part of the LGBTQ community?
Right, I hear them screaming no more hate. We have not hated anyone. We have been in this community for years. The rainbow flag has been in the school for years. The transsexual teacher has been at the school for years. There have been no incidents, no hate. We also are not protesting them. We're protesting the LAUSD and the school for talking to our kids about a topic that we think parents should talk to their kids about. So there's no hate against anyone. We love them just as much as they love us.
Now, why do you think that they are pushing this right now?
I think they want to be seen. They want to talk about the different type of families. I get that, but there are lots of types of families. There are divorced families who don't have assemblies to talk about that. There's all kinds of issues that are not topics to discuss with young kids. We can talk about that when they're old enough.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
So, the reason why I want to play that interview is because, one, she doesn't look like a crazy person just screaming or something like that. There's like a rational kind of, thought process behind some of these parents, whether you agree with them or not. But she pointed out the fact that the school has had pride stuff in the past, that there's people within the school that are LGBT, that they obviously haven't done mass protests or whatever before. But we are really kind of at a heightened state right now with a lot of stuff, different stuff going on. But to have a special assembly, and they're not into the idea. So parents have talked to administrate or tried to really have meetings with the administration, I guess, to see how far it was going to go. And a lot of parents feel like they haven't really gotten the answers that they need, because it wasn't just them reading the book, but they're supposed to have discussions, and they don't know where all that's going to go. And I think that's fair. And I think she's correct that a lot of people do want to be seen, and I think that's a lot of the big argument. But a lot of times, I'll have conversations with people about this stuff. I'm like, don't you think that everybody needs to be represented, and et cetera, blah, 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 and diversity? And I'm like, but we don't represent everyone, though. And someone asked me that last time someone asked me, well, what's something that's not represented normally? I'm like, okay, a Pentecostal black girl. There's lots of things that are about me that I don't see kind of plastered and celebrated anywhere. So, but that's whatever, it's not a big deal. So I understand these parents being concerned. I think I'm going to play a bit of this Fox interview from this parent, because it goes a little deeper into it. So, give me one second.
Fashion File, the shopping destination for 100% authentic pre-loved ultra-luxury.
Sorry. Ad. We'll just wait till that's done. And we'll get back to that. Yeah, but if it's like a community that a lot of people are religious, I don't know why they kind of thought that was just gonna pass, I guess. Let me scroll out and then go back. Yeah, so I think it's an interesting situation, especially when I show you guys something from the past.
LGBTQ community, but he does not want his young children exposed to inappropriate materials. His name is Manuk Gregorian, and he joins us now. Good morning to you, Manuk.
Good morning.
Good morning. Well, God bless you. Thanks for coming on. I understand you have two sets of twin girls. You have 8-year-olds and 4-year-olds. I'm sure you have a fun house. Well, thank you for joining us. All right, so what started the issue? What started the protest at the school?
Well, we found out about this assembly back in early May, and we have made numerous attempts to contact school officials and have a meeting with them. We did have a meeting with the principal, but she couldn't be helpful, so we asked to speak with Mr. Carvalho. We have made numerous attempts to contact him, but he ignored every opportunity that we had to speak with him. He just didn't want to acknowledge us. And we had no choice but to take it to the streets and make sure that he hears us and can speak with us.
Okay, so it all started, the assembly that you're talking about, the students were all at this assembly, elementary school, and a book was read that some parents had problems with. The book is called The Great Big Book of Families. It talks about multicultural families, multi-religious families, families with adopted children, families with same-sex partners. And some of the parents said, a lot of Armenian families live in this area, and one dad said, I don't like the idea of my little kid coming home and saying it's fine for a family to have two dads, two men to love each other. We don't respect that. It's not in our culture as Christians and Armenians. Another dad who's a protester said LGBT individuals exist in all cultures and communities, and our representation and our voices being heard is not a matter of discussion. It's a civil right that was earned through decades and decades of activism. Where do you stand on this issue?
Well, my whole thing is about it's the 10-year-old children should not be exposed to any of this LGBTQ.
You just think they're too young.
They're too young. It wasn't about the issue of the book itself only, because after the book was supposed to be read, they were supposed to turn around and have a discussion about what they just read and heard. And we have a thing. One of our parents named Anna has asked these questions numerous times. What would you answer my child when he comes up to you and says, I have a mommy and daddy. My mommy was pregnant. When they have two daddies, which daddy does he get pregnant? Where does the baby come from? What are you going to answer them? Not one school official has an answer to that question. They're saying it's not about sexualizing or grooming our children, but yet they have no answers to us. And when we want to speak with them and have these discussions, they totally ignore us. And they just don't want to talk to us, and I'm fed up, and the school is not safe for my children to take back, and they don't want to come out and talk to me and say how they're going to make this school safer and what's going to be their next move, and they just totally want to ignore me.
So I think that's basically the gist of it. So this is I don't know how large the Armenian population is within that school, but again, like, it kind of reminds me when there's a book called This Book is Gay, which that book is very gay. But it's really inappropriate. It has some sexually graphic things in there. It also has talks about how you can go on an app to talk to gay people. So if you're giving that to like a child or like a middle schooler or whatever, a minor, I think that's weird, right? It's in the back of the book how you can go on apps and chat with, you know, I don't think it said explicitly like adults on chat rooms or whatever, but that's weird. That's really weird. And so you had a lot of Muslims who came out to protest it and were upset about it. And there's even a portion in the book that talks about how to talk to Muslim people about gay stuff. So, yeah, they were upset about it. And so our governor and other people really tried to downplay it. But you're really pushing in these religious communities. I don't, that's not going to work. That's not going to work at all in the least bit. So I'm not, and one reason why they like that school and there's that community is that they, you know, are there's so much of, I guess, of their culture, whatever, ingrained, and also like, you know, teaching English and other stuff. So there's a lot of reasons why people want to stay within those schools. But he's considering, you know, if they keep pushing this stuff, taking his children out. So what I want to, I guess, take you guys back on a journey a bit. Back in 2008, something happened that I never really thought was going to happen. And so I remember getting, I wasn't like, it was in the news, but I wasn't like too focused on the case or whatever. And I just thought it was like going to get shot down. Like I wasn't following it a lot, but there was a ballot initiative for Prop 8 in California. And if you voted yes, it was to ban gay marriage. If you voted no, it was to get rid of it. It was, you know, to make it, to have it legal or whatever. So I was so surprised, just shocked that it passed. I was really surprised. And that was when, you know, that same year Obama was elected. And so I was not surprised that how the minority breakdown was. Minorities overwhelmingly voted to ban gay marriage. Like they were probably like, oh yeah, all these black people coming out to vote for the first black president. And they're like, gay marriage, voted that down, you know? But I was surprised. I'm like, California did that? So the interesting thing, I said that so many, you know, minorities voted for a ban on gay marriage, but a lot of minorities are Democrats, are they not? So there is definitely a traditional sort of like element of like older voters. There's definitely a lot of religious element that plays into it, because a lot of minorities are religious. As a matter of fact, if you look at data now as far as like acceptance of like gay marriage, it's pretty much most people are okay with it. The only group that isn't like maybe above 50% on it are people who frequent church like more than once a week. And who's most likely to go to church more than once a week? Black people. So what, not surprised, like the minority sort of breakdown, but another reason why even Democrats came and crossed over and voted for it is because there were commercials that the Yes campaign was putting out. And now the purpose of me showing this video isn't really to get into a big debate about gay marriage or anything like that. It's just that I want to, there are people who mention like the slippery slope thing, and people insisted that they were lying. People insisted that they were lying when it wasn't true what the people on the Yes campaign said, and the people on the No campaign said, oh, that's ridiculous. When it wasn't ridiculous, it was precisely what they wanted to happen. So back in 2008, this is a commercial from 2008, and this is what they were saying was going to happen if it was passed. Again, I'm not showing this to make it a big debate today about gay marriage or whatever. I just want to show you, I guess, that they were right, I guess, is the point. So here's a commercial from back in the day.
Mom, guess what I learned in school today?
What, sweetie?
I learned how a prince married a prince, and I can marry a princess.
Think it can happen? It's already happened. When Massachusetts legalized gay marriage, schools began teaching second graders that boys can marry boys. The courts ruled parents had no right to object.
Under California law, public schools instruct kids about marriage. Teaching children about gay marriage will happen here unless we pass Proposition 8. Yes on 8.
So yeah, that was a commercial that they had running, and you might be thinking, so what's the big deal? If that's what you think, and you think that it should be taught in school or whatever, that's one argument. But they said the No campaign said this was propaganda. They said it was pure propaganda. It wasn't propaganda. They were just lying because they knew that people wouldn't be okay with it back then. So like, oh, that's not true. We're not going to teach it in the schools. Now, I guess enough people didn't really believe them, or enough people were concerned about it that they were like, you know, your civil unions are fine, but I'm concerned about all the repercussions that could happen if this is legalized. Because it's legalized, and then you move it to make it normalized, and then you want people to be seen, and you want people to be included, and then you have to force my kids to be included, etc. Blah, blah, blah. So there's like the argument about the slippery slope thing, and the No campaign. We're insisting that it was propaganda, and it wasn't true. It wasn't true, and the whole time, I'm certain that they were probably like, of course it's true, and that's what we want to happen. So now we're here today with parents, Armenian parents, protesting, saying, you know, we don't want special assemblies on this matter. And it's far bigger than that. In California, we covered this last year, I guess, when it happened, but there was a school where they had teachers who were having secret sort of meetings in clubs, LGBT clubs, and they were teaching other people, other teachers and stuff, how to have their secret clubs, because if it was listed as some kind of different activity, if a parent asked like, is my kid in the club, they could be like, oh, well, I don't have an official list. And they would be spying during the pandemic. They were like spying on kids, like different profiles, so they could recruit them into their clubs, and then they would come up with different gender plans or whatever, so they wouldn't tell their parents that they were, trans or whatever. And they would they changed a kid's medical records, even though like you can't give a kid an Advil or something, but without permission. But you're like changing, someone's like medical stuff. And then a parent was really mad because they changed something in their medical records, and then that was like important for them not to change too. But that's in California. In Florida, people talk about the Parental Rights and Education Bill. You might be like, what the heck is that? You might know it by its slander name, the Don't Say Gay bill, which it doesn't say that. It says that the schools can't teach about gender identity and sexuality in grades K through 3, unless it's deemed, in older grades, you can't do it if it's deemed in an inappropriate manner. So it says sexuality, it doesn't say homosexuality, it just says sexuality. And of course, the gender identity stuff. But another thing that law did is that it said that, like, essentially, if there's something going on with your child in their mental health or their well-being, that school cannot hide that from the parent. And people wondered, like, why does this law exist? But there were actually like schools in Florida where they were having secret gender plans, talking about where the kids are going to sleep on overnight trips, and calling them by their pronouns and preferred names at school. And then like, but if they're talking to the parent about the child, they're not using those names and whatever, they're dead naming them and using the appropriate pronouns or whatever, etc. So they're creating this culture of hardlining the parents on one side and the school on the other side. And the sort of stories that I heard about the mental anguish and distress that it was having on the kids was really, really concerning. But that's where we're at now. Once upon a time, these parents were just scared about learning that you could marry a princess or you could marry a prince. And now we're at the point where teachers have transition closets in their classroom. that they don't have them. You have teachers, and I don't know how often you guys are on TikTok or anything like that, but man, these teachers are really telling on themselves. But they'll be like, I proudly don't have an American flag, but I do have a trans flag or whatever, or a pride flag. And one teacher told a story about how she has her kids like do the pledge to the flag, to the gay flag. So it's a big leap from what happened in 2008, or this commercial that people were afraid of. I'm going to play a video that I made during the midterm election. Unfortunately, my governor was reelected, but I did mention the book, the drama with the book, This Book is Gay. So it does have some stuff in it. It's blurred out or whatever, but I want to just paint the picture for what kind of stuff is going on now.
What I've heard from parents across the state is inappropriate content in school libraries. We're talking about pornography. They've asked Gretchen Whitmer to comment, and she's been silent.
I know that we have rights to understand the curriculum.
Gender normative, gender fluid, gender neutral, and gender non-binary.
The materials.
I finally gave in and ordered a binder for myself.
Opt our children out if we think that it doesn't keep in line with our desires in terms of what they are learning.
Our curriculum is deeply using critical race theory.
Also, parents can attend parent-teacher conferences, take part in the debate that is happening, and these are happening at the local level, where they should be, so that parents can be involved. We also have a duty to make sure that all children feel accepted and safe.
How is liability affected if a student dies by suicide?
And can learn and play when they are in school.
A drag queen for every school. That is what would be fun for kids and lift them up when they're having emotional issues.
I reject the false choice that it has to be one or the other. But I'll also tell you this, is with a really heavy heart that I see politicians try to wedge communities against one another. It is dangerous and it is selfish.
Instead of you guys taking the 6 books out, we wouldn't even be here.
They're sexually explicit. They're pornographic, they're disgusting. I'm disgusted just looking at them, let alone read them.
This is an issue about decency. Focus on the issues.
We've received the answer now that she is not going to stand with parents on this issue.
Governor, do you really think books are more dangerous than guns? Like, do you really think that books pose a greater danger to our kids than gun violence does? Mrs. Dixon is trying to distract us. She's trying to divert attention from the fact that she's bankrolled by Betsy DeVos. She has endorsed Betsy DeVos's plan to drain $500 million out of our public schools, and that's why she's waging these fights. We have to protect our kids.
So sad that she's my governor. She got reelected by a lot, unfortunately. But very unfortunate. I kind of forgot how much all that stuff was in there, so it's really disturbing going back and watching that video. Oh my gosh. So that's on my YouTube if you guys want to check that out and see it again. But some of the stuff that was in there. My friend This Is Savvy read through the book, and you can go check out her Rumble, and she's like, I read this book so you don't have to, and she goes through it if you're interested about how bad it is. But that's the kind of stuff that they're fighting to have in the schools. And it was amazing watching like the protests from the parents who were like, take this stuff out, and then but yet the LGBT community who wanted that stuff to remain. And I'm like, why does it have to be that you have to defend this pornographic material, and if we don't keep it in the school, then you somehow feel invalidated about who you are? It's really weird. Like, I'm straight. I wouldn't be like, oh, there's this, Kama Sutra, but I don't know what all's in that book, but I've never read. I'm just talking out of ignorance, I suppose, here, but that's like the position book or whatever, right? So if it was in a kid's school or something, and there was a protest about like, this isn't appropriate, and I showed up, I wouldn't be like, why do you hate straight people? I wouldn't do that. So, so I question all those people who showed up in support of those crazy books. I'm looking at you sideways. Is it just totally out of ignorance and you had no idea it was in them? I mean, Ron DeSantis did a press conference about some of the books that they were taken out or whatever, and as he started like going through what was in them, the media had to cut their feed because it was too graphic for TV. So if it's too graphic for you to put on TV, then why is it fine for these kids to have the access in the schools to that stuff? That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And I know there's plenty of like, you know, people in the who are gay and bi and so on, who are like, this is too much. This is too much. But I guess point one for the evangelicals, you know, right-wing folks back then who, you know, warned about slippery slopes, but it's very much something that I wish people were wrong about. I wish people were wrong about it, but the thing that, again, I didn't bring this up to be like, have a debate about gay marriage. I brought it up because they were lying. They were lying. And some of you watching might be like, we should have, you know, be teaching all this stuff about the different families in school, which my sister brought up a point. She said, we never had an assembly about different families, mixed families, and, or whatever, when we were kids. That didn't happen. We came from a very diverse community and other stuff like that. So why do people feel that's necessary to do that? So they lied. They very much lied back then when they were like, this is propaganda. And shame on the media and other folks for also running like it was propaganda, and everybody acting like it was propaganda, and that kind of stuff would never happen and be in the schools if it was legalized. You could have just been honest. I mean, it failed anyway. The reason why gay marriage is, like, you know, accepted everywhere in the United States is because it went on to the Supreme Court. So and the court over you know, turned all of the bans and stuff. So now you can go and get, you know, married anywhere. But they knew at the time. They just didn't want to be honest about it. They didn't want to be honest about it. So I'm gonna ask you just to keep in the back of your mind, what else are people not being honest about now? So we'll move on. So Mr. Comey, our former FBI director, had an interview with Jen Psaki, who was still acting as press secretary while she had all these, like, you know, media offers and whatnot. And I didn't think Jen was very good at her job. I mean, she's very much better than the one person they have doing it now. But, I mean, Trump's gal Kaylee was, you know, a rock star. So anyway, Jen Psaki has her show. I have no idea what her ratings are. I should probably look that up sometime because I can't imagine them being great. But she interviewed Comey, and asked about who he was going to vote for. And I thought it was interesting because he's so full of it. It is just a sycophant, silly answer. An absolutely silly answer. So I've got to share it with you guys, and we got to talk about it.
You were a Republican most of your life, but voted for, and you may still consider yourself one, but voted for Biden in 2020. Do you intend to vote for him again, or is there anyone on the Republican side you might consider if it's not Trump?
It has to be Joe Biden. And I'm glad he's willing to serve. It has to be somebody committed to the rule of law, committed to the values of this country. And I'm not talking about policy. People can disagree about policy. There are things above those disagreements that all of us should think about the same way. The president must be someone who abides the law and our Constitution. And there's no one else but Joe Biden.
Okay, so there's no one no one besides Joe Biden, who, thank God for the Supreme Court, and thank God for the justices that are on the court, that it does have a conservative bent, because he certainly tried, especially during the pandemic with the OSHA mandates, trying to force businesses to force the employees, to coerce them into getting jabbed. That was beyond his scope, and it got struck down. But he tries it. So to say no one else, I can understand why he doesn't like Trump. Trump fired him, you know. But he was super shady, super shady. The firing of Comey, I'm like blending him with Cuomo. I think that's why I keep saying his name wrong. But it ended up triggering like the Russia investigation and all that other stuff, which was bunk. But he did a lot of shady things, and the FBI did a lot of shady things and are continuing to do shady things. So including his whole press conference with Hillary Clinton. And I was in my office that day when I worked for the Michigan Republican Party, and we were watching the press conference and him come out, and Obama and them were just like, we're gonna, whatever they decide to do, we're gonna just refer to them, because there was that tarmac meeting, etc., blah blah blah. So I'm listening to Comey lay out a pretty solid case for why Hillary Clinton should be prosecuted. He laid out a pretty solid case, like, oh, she did this, they destroyed this, they used hammers to smash phones and all this. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's going down. And then he made up some kind of new standard to not, like, it was like supreme negligence or something. But I'm like, for real, bro? So he just like invented something so she wouldn't be prosecuted or whatever. So she went on to lose the presidency, thank God. And I'm like, that's basically the only justice we're getting in this world, like, I suppose, that's Clinton related, is just her being denied the presidency and never being able to clutch that thing that she's wanted for so long. But the list could go on, but Joe Biden is not some kind of bastion of the Constitution. Even if you don't want Donald Trump to be the president, why not, if you're still a Republican? Well, he doesn't consider himself to be a Republican now. So what made you a Republican in the first place? What kind of values and principles did you have if you're a lifelong Republican? And if you had those principles and you held those principles, you really think there's no other Republicans today that will share those values? Are you kidding me? No one who's kind of interested in running will share those values enough that you could be like, oh, I share those values, and I think that they won't totally turn over the Constitution. What about like Mike Pence or something? Like, Mike Pence is not going to win the primary, but point is, he's not saying, well, I would consider Mike Pence, but he's not going to get it. Mike Pence, and a lot of people who are really pro-Trump are still mad about Mike Pence's decision to not delay the electoral votes, but if Comey appreciates that, or at least what he did, and he was, had Republican values, why wouldn't he be like, what we really need is someone like Mike Pence, or what we really need is a Nikki Haley, what we really need is Vivek, or what we really just, or maybe he thinks they're so too populist or whatever, but you don't think like a Nikki Haley is like right up your alley or something? It's gotta be Joe Biden. It's gotta be Joe Biden. The amendments aren't absolute. He's coming for your gun rights, Joe Biden. That guy. Like, yes, people can disagree on policy, but Joe Biden is like the student loan thing. He had no authority to try to push it the way that he was trying to push it. So spare me. just utter madness, utter ridiculousness for him to go that route. So there's another clip here that I'm going to go ahead and play.
I mean, Vladimir Putin does not want Joe Biden to be president of the United States for reasons that I hope the American people see, because he acts in our national interest. He would very much like Donald Trump to be president again, because Donald Trump is, for reasons I still can't explain, very, very fond of Vladimir Putin. And so they will find ways to interfere. I hope our intelligence community is equipped to respond, maybe better than we did in 2016, but they'll come for this election.
The Russia collusion thing was a hoax. Was a hoax, guys. And he knows that. He knows that. Or he could be suppressing the truth in his mind. Who knows? And I also think it's ridiculous. Just look at the state of the world today, the affairs of the world. And when Putin decided to act, when who was in office? Now with Biden, okay? And let's go back to the Obama administration when he was telling the Russians, like, I'll have more flexibility after after I get reelected. So spare me about the Biden and Trump and who's more pro Putin or what. His rhetoric is one thing, but actually acting with sanctions and other stuff, and who people respect on we don't know what they'll do. Maybe they'll take us out or something. People are more concerned, I think, with Trump for sure. For sure. But the thing about Biden, though, he kept saying like, oh, Putin, he's doing all these things and that's why we're hurting at the gas tank. And I'm like, you're just making him sound like he's not only winning or causing damage to Ukraine, but he's definitely causing damage to us. And I've said it repeatedly, and I really didn't like it, because I'm like, you're making us seem weak and you're making him very strong. If he's responsible, because Biden didn't want to bear any responsibility for the gas prices and stuff, and he wanted responsibility when they tapped into the reserves and it moved like a half a cent or a cent or something like that. The DNC actually even made a graphic about it. It was pretty funny, and they like stretched it out. The cents out very far, so it looked like it was like a big change or whatever, but that really wasn't the case. It was a very funny graphic. We shared it at the time, but he didn't want any responsibility for inflation or the gas price or anything like that. So he just like, it's all Putin. Putin is the one doing all this. It's Putin who's ruining America. It has nothing to do with me. And I'm like, I'm sure the Russians who are pro-Putin appreciate you saying that, sir. I think Putin probably appreciates that he's causing great harm to America right now. I'm sure they really appreciate that as our, geopolitical enemies. I'm sure they appreciate that. So no, I don't buy that Vladimir Putin would prefer Trump as president. I think there's a lot of, especially as Russia, and Vivek did an interview with maybe ABC, and he was talking about the biggest threat to America right now is this alliance with Russia and China, and what could happen as far as that goes. And China is making a lot of big moves. And while America is going around the world preaching about gender identity and is obsessed with all that stuff and criticizing Africa for their policies on LGBT issues, China is going to places and they're like, you know what, let's make some deals. Let's get you some weapons. They're making moves, and America is becoming weaker and weaker and weaker. And as people just take us less seriously on the world stage, and it's very concerning, but we're all focused on so many of the wrong things. We're not in a good position. I totally, again, I cannot buy that Putin would rather have Biden than Trump. Now our enemies are going to sow whatever kind of distrust and feelings that people have, and try to continue to help us harm ourselves from within. They'll do that. So if they want to hype up things about Trump that make us more divided, they'll do that. Anyone will do that if they want to destroy America. The best way to destroy America is to get us to destroy ourselves. That's how you destroy a superpower, by corrupting them from within. You know? So, and one thing though, before I move on, Russia, when they were talking about different things like misinformation that they were feeding to America, and one of the things that they were doing is they were putting out misinformation about fracking because they didn't want us to tap into our own energy potential, and they want people to have a negative outlook on fracking and other things that make us more energy independent. I'm like, how come we're not talking about that? Like, if the Russians don't want us to frack, maybe we should. Maybe we should. So, Alex Epstein had a good thread about the threat of that we're really facing with our energy policies. Perhaps we'll go into that and talk about that tomorrow. But we got a lot of things that are concerning as far as our future as a nation up on the or down the pipe or whatever that we need to have our eye out on, that a lot of people are very distracted with other things. So anyway, that's the show for today. But I think we'll go ahead and read that segment, that post that I talked about, that I shared on my YouTube earlier that I mentioned, because I have a little, I mean, I'm over, it's after 5, but you know, I start a little late, so we're gonna go ahead and read this post that I made. And again, this is from my book, Of Course God is Blatant Against Abortion. So if you like this, I recommend that you go ahead and that you read it. Go pick up the book. It's available on Barnes & Noble. It's also available on Amazon. So, okay. In the Zong trial of 1783, the court had to decide whether throwing at least 142 African slaves overboard in an attempt to save the crew during a storm would be covered by insurance. These were human beings, but it was argued they were cargo and was the same as if horses had been thrown overboard. This trial helped to highlight the inhumanity of the slave trade and fueled abolitionists to end it. The insurance companies were not ordered to recoup the losses, but those responsible for the massacre were never brought to justice. Justice John Lee, Great Britain's Solicitor General, didn't think it warranted criminal charges. What is this claim that human people have been thrown overboard? This is a case of chattels or goods. Blacks are goods and property. It is madness to accuse these well-serving, honorable men of murder. They acted out of necessity and in the most appropriate manner for the cause. The late Captain Collingwood acted in the interest of his ship to protect the safety of his crew. To question the judgment of an experienced, well-traveled captain held in the highest regard is one of folly, especially when talking of slaves. The case is the same as if wood had been thrown overboard. Today we view these statements as monstrous, but they sound awfully familiar to me. What is this claim that abortion takes a human life? This is a question of bodily autonomy. Fetuses are clumps of cells and the property of the mother until they reach viability. It is madness to accuse women of murder. They act out of necessity for what is best for their physical, mental, and emotional health. To question their judgment and their choice is wrong, especially when talking about a parasite. Treating a pregnancy is the same as treating cancer. Every sentence in that paragraph is taken from multiple conversations with pro-choice activists, even equating pregnancy to cancer. Instinctively, we know that abortion is a terrible thing. Rationally, we know abortion is a terrible thing. But the horrible truth about humanity is we can rationalize our way into justifying insidious horrors and train others to be numb to them. If you've studied anything about fetuses, you know they are not clumps of cells, no more than you and me. They are not the mother's body. They don't have much in common with parasites. These regurgitated talking points exist to dehumanize the unborn. Abortion activists fight against mothers, seeing sonograms. They claim they don't want to bother women who are already making a difficult decision. It's unconscionable that anyone wouldn't want to persuade a woman from changing her mind. Senator Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts, Democrat if you didn't know, even rallied against pregnancy crisis centers that help women in need. She's furious they outnumber abortion clinics 3-1 in her state. Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan has also come against them as well. She vetoed $3 million for pregnancy resource centers and $10 million for adoption promotion out of the 2023 budget. If you fight against informing women, offering them hope, and giving them options, it's not about protecting them, it's about protecting the business of abortion. And you could rationalize the need for it. Captain Collingwood could argue he did what he had to save his crew. If someone had to be sacrificed, why not the slaves? After all, abortion activists argue it's better to be dead than live a life of suffering anyway. Of course, the Zong was overpacked, and that contributed to the crew's predicament. Shouldn't the captain have at least been held accountable for the choices leading up to that horrible decision? Shouldn't women? Since more than 99% of abortions are enacted through consensual sex, asking how did the baby get there will defeat a vast majority of bodily autonomy arguments. Nowadays, you likely hear consent to sex isn't consent to pregnancy, but the consent is at least implied. If you don't know procreation can lead to creation, you're certainly too young to have consensual sex. Besides, pregnancy isn't something you can willfully control. You can try to arrange it, but your consent doesn't guarantee fertilization and implantation. You either are or you aren't pregnant. Announcing your child who cannot respond, doesn't have your permission to live, doesn't do anything but make you feel better. But society certainly has no obligation to consent to participating or allowing the killing of that child. There are millions of reasons for society to reject abortion on demand, and each one has their own distinctive set of DNA. So that's a portion of my book. Of course, God is blatantly against abortion. And again, like nothing in there was like, in that segment had anything to do with religion. And then someone's like, the Bible has nothing, God didn't say anything about abortion. I'm like, how are you going to jump past the whole post and be mad about the link? But, you know, I just take it as they had nothing good to say. And they didn't have anything good to say following it afterwards. But go check out the book. You know, I worked really hard on it. And so for those of you who do not know, it covers the science. It talks a lot about the political landscape. It is a very United States centered book. I know that people debate this stuff all over the world and people have different laws and stuff. I'm from the U.S. I know a lot of stuff going on here. And like I talk quite a lot about my state of Michigan because I studied a lot of the data because I was trying to stop Prop 3, but it's still a lot of the stuff in there is still very important besides like the political focus on the United States. But it talks about science, it talks about philosophy, it talks about our rights in history and all sorts of different things, but it does cover theology, of course. But it lays out the groundwork for the book. Let me show again the picture of it. Again, it's going to say coming soon, but it is out. I have to switch out a picture there. And, but yeah, that's the book. So it starts off saying, well, it talks about, after the introduction, it talks about the science and the consensus of where life begins and the Jacob study that talks about that and how a large portion of Americans or people feel that it's important to know when life begins and that's when it should be protected. And as far as the moral authority on who we believe that can say when life begins, people say biologists. But the problem though is biologists are like, and by the way, these biologists are mostly like pro-choice, they're Democrats, etc. But they still, can acknowledge, yeah, that's when life begins. But as far as like anything deeper or philosophical, or whether a woman should still have the right to choose, they're kind of still like that, not it. And so, I even quote like one particular biologist, and they're like, it should be left up for like philosophers and theologians to talk about. So then it segues into like the philosophy. And then when I tackle, different art, philosophies like personhood and, bodily autonomy and other stuff like that you hear in a lot of debates, after I, talk about those things, then I dive into the theology. And then there's a lot of stuff that's even like after the portion where it talks about the scriptures and stuff that are kind of like the key components of it. So like it goes into the societal harm of abortion. I've talked about that before. I've talked about objective morality, why we need, even if you don't believe in objective morality, why you should act like we have objective morality, why it's in your best interest, the harm that it's done to women, and also not like, my goal in writing this wasn't to condemn women forever for something like this. I don't believe that they have to be, but I do want it to end. So I believe in redemption over condemnation and I think that's actually like a chapter title. So it's got a lot of stuff in it. If you're interested, again, it's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Again, it's a big labor of love. So I have some different guests that are lined up to come and speak about these different kind of topics. And I will do some announcements soon, so stay tuned. And I will see you guys later. God bless you. And